Hey guys! So, welcome to Wine About It Wednesday, Cinco de Mayo. So, I have my Dressage at Devon cup again because a little reminder, a little shout out to Devon. I'm on the board of directors and we still need lots of help. So, anyone you, anybody, we're definitely still looking for donations. It's going to be the greatest show ever. We're going to have live streaming. It's going to be so exciting. So everybody in the whole country, and the world for that matter, can enjoy Dressage at Devon with our amazing high-tech team. So that's going to be totally great. And we need your help because we want to make it the best show. I mean, as a competitor with the energy and just I love Devon so much. It's my favorite show. But we need help getting it all sorted out and making it even better than ever before. So tonight I have many pages, lots of pages of questions that come in and topics. So I thank you guys all for always having great ideas. Tonight I'm going to talk about how to know when you're bringing along a young horse. How do you know when to move up a level? What about the pressures of having the horse come to a special level? Things like that. So stay tuned for that because that will be a really great conversation. But a couple of announcements before we go delve into that. Um, we are going to have two amazing clinics this summer here at Blue Ridge Farm in Landrum, South Carolina. June 4th through the 6th, we're going to have my mentor of over 30 years, Charles DeComfy, is coming. So that's going to be a wonderful event. And on Friday, we're going to have a little kind of welcome party, and I'm going to give a lecture about, the importance of mentorship and navigating your way through, through the sport with the importance of a mentor and things like that. So that'll be a fun, interactive night, as well as you guys will be able to see the master at work. So I highly recommend everybody come. But this is like hot off the press. We just arranged for a team to come and help live stream the event. So that is going to be epic. We're going to have like all different like camera views, and these guys are coming with their camper and they're going to make it great. So if you cannot actually join us in person, the Charles DeComfy Clinic is going to be totally live streamed so y'all can enjoy it from all over the world. So that's exciting. I can't wait because everyone needs to witness this man for real. Like, if anybody likes what I have to say at all, like, I've learned it from him. I have practiced it. It is absolutely is what makes my program successful. He's amazing. So I can't wait for you guys to be able to experience that as well. He's getting older, so I want to just capture as much of him for all of you as possible. So that's going to be totally great. August 6th through the 8th, Jillian Kreinbring is going to come. She is a functional anatomist expert. So we were laughing about, we're like, all trainers should come to this event. And then we were like, well, but everybody who rides their horse, like, is the trainer. So they need to understand how the horse's body functions, what we're doing when we're asking for certain things. She gave an amazing lecture in the academy. She was one of my guest speakers, and it was an awesome lecture about contact, about, is it a negative, like a constrictive type of contact, or is it an elastic, breathable contact, and what that does to your horse's neck, and what does that mean for his muscles and his ligaments and his bones? What does that look like in his neck? So that was just a tiny little inkling of what we all need to know. If we're going to ride horses, we need to know this stuff and we need to be experts. And, we always love to talk about horses because here we all are. It's not a Cinco de Mayo. Wish I had a margarita, but it's a glass of wine. But Jillian's amazing. She brings the information in a way it's totally understandable. I highly recommend coming to that. That is not going to be live stream because it's a lot more private and a lot more concentrated study. So it's not a riding clinic, although she does do that as well. But, maybe even some of you could get together and send your trainer. It's incredibly important information to how the horse functions. And we all need to know that so we can make good training choices. What else? Oh, I always think about like what happened this week. Two great things happened on Monday. I had a goal setting session with my coach Allie Brock. That was awesome. We went through all the horses and we've got some pretty big things planning. So keep your fingers crossed that yeah, things work out and go in a good way. It's really it's an exciting group of horses. The best string I've ever had, and it is really exciting. So that was great. We had a goal setting session there. And then in the academy, every other Monday, we have what we call the tack room chat. And I got to be involved, which is always fun. Usually it's always Ashley Perkins, who's my right-hand girl. And it's then a guest trainer as well. And so that's like 8 of my hand-picked long-term students that know my program, have worked on these exercises. And we all kind of virtually sit around and sit on our tack trunks and talk about training. There's always 2 specific videos to review, and then you can come with your questions. So Ashley and I had a great time. It was actually really, really fun to kind of go back and forth with her and talk about how we use the exercises, what we think about when we're doing the exercises, what we focus on when we're teaching the exercises. So I hope you guys check that out too, because it was really fun for me to be involved in that, because I'm always here on Wednesdays, and in the academy every week I come in an educational video, short and to the point, usually like 12 to 15 minutes. And I'm riding, I'm talking about what I'm doing, what the exercise is. It's like a little glossary of different exercises. But I don't always get to come to the tack room chat. So I was really excited about that. For the apprentices and trainers, what's included is a once a month lecture. So that's always every second Wednesday of the month. So that's coming up next week. And I decided the topic this time is going to be how horses learn best. So I've started to kind of like, go in my brain and start preparing for that, and going to start some research tonight. And I think it's going to be a great subject. I'm excited to dig a little deeper into that, and I hope you guys can join us. If you're not yet in the academy, you can check out the fundamentals on the Team Tate Academy website, and you can get in there. There's a back door into the academy. So y'all should sign up, because by the next time enrollment comes, it's all going to look different and be different, and we're not exactly sure how different, but if you're thinking about it, I would just jump in. So yeah, that's about, and the podcast, yay. I'm just like, every time I go into the Apple podcast and I'm in there, it's like this dream. I can't believe it. And last Friday was writing with a schedule, like what we do, what we think about the first day of the work day of the week. And it was a really fun breakdown of our program and what we do, and how hard we work the horses, and that kind of thing. And then on this Friday, I have a special guest from Perfect Products. Jeff Morgenstern is the owner, operator, guru behind Perfect Products. And I can't wait for you guys to meet him, because he is an exceptional human being. He's smart. It's like every time I hear him talk about the products and how he came up with them and what they do and how they work. I find it incredibly inspirational. And I know you guys will love getting to meet Jeff, who's the guy, behind Perfect Products. So, yeah, so to start off, I've got lots and lots, like I said, I have lots of questions from a lot of people. So I really appreciate you guys sending in all your questions. And you can always message me, message Team Tate Academy. If you have a specific subject you really want me to cover, send it in. I love to talk about horses. So anything, I love answering questions. Always when I go to clinics, I always have my students, they're like, I have a question. And I'm like, I have an answer. And if I don't know the answer, I will go home tonight and I will look it up and I will have an answer for you tomorrow. But usually I have an answer of some sort, you know what I mean? So this question comes from Laura Adrianzi, and she said, I would love to know your view on bringing along a young or green horse in the sense of knowing when they're ready to move up. How do you feel about pushing horses too soon? Do you, as a top pro, ever feel pressure to move horses up the ranks quickly? And I love this topic, and we have a wonderful 4-year-old stallion in the barn owned by Jessica and Arthur Greenwood. His name is Duke of Tryon. And there's a really great picture and post that the judges last weekend thought he should be called the King of Tryon because he's really special. And whenever I think of like a talented young horse, I like to look into my barn and and make it real for you guys. It's really easy for people to like talk about in general, or you're like, oh, I always do this for these horses. And I like to actually look at what's actually up the hill, like right up there. What's up the hill? What's standing in my stable? And how are they doing? We really pride ourselves here at Team Tate Dressage about like understanding the real umbrella of classical dressage and the importance of a correct foundation and the fundamentals, but also that like as much as there are strict like principles to be adhered to, horses are also extremely individual. And we really like to base the training on each of their own individualities. Some horses get lunge before ridden, some horses do not. It all just totally depends. And I actually just posted something that I shared from Cerise, who's my Team Tate account manager. She's amazing. And I shared it from her page because it was Ian King talking about that horses age 3 times faster than humans. And I love that. Like it first started talking about how an older horse is this age and like, what would be required of an older horse. And then it like switched it at the end and it said, like a 3-year-old horse is like a 9-year-old child. And like when you think about the 3-year-olds in your life that that's like so right on, right? And I mean, they're gangly and they don't know their balance and they're like really like a rubbery little child, not really knowing where they end and the world begins and, forget balance. Like that's even just, it's hard to even start to teach them about all the rules, they're not like serious enough about things yet. And then we talk about 4-year-old horses, which is like a 12-year-old child. And like I love to put that into like human context because that starts to make a lot more sense to us when we are, whatever, thinking about, oh, I got to go to this horse show, or could he do this class? Could he do the 4-year-old class? And just because your horse is 4 years old does not mean it should do the 4-year-old class. I've had wonderful horses that just did not do the 4-year-old class at all. And I've had a little bit of a medley of all kinds. Like I've had one who's Apollo, who's amazing, amazing. One of my best horses I've ever had. Like, he's incredible. Highly sensitive. Um, he did not, I bought him at the end of his 4-year-old year, but he did not do the 4-year-old test. He did not do the 5-year-old test. He was still growing and gangly. He did by the middle of his 6-year-old year, he was able to do the 6-year-old test. But um, yeah, I mean, he turned out to be a wonderful pre St. George horse by the time he was 8. So it's a little bit like it's all so individual. Duke is 4 years old, and so he gets ridden. We also keep this rule of like 3-year-olds get ridden like 3 times a week. 4-year-olds, we like to ride them maybe 4 times a week. He's probably worked a fifth day, um, but it's like a little bit easier. It's like he gets lunged or he does some round pen work. There's also an amazing video in there, Jessica doing some liberty work with him. So he's stimulated a little bit every day, but it's not the same like work. Um, and it's certainly like you want to keep to a theme. So, like with a 4-year-old, maybe one day a week would be like this week we're going to show them this weekend. So this week we did one lesson and like worked on where to ride the tempo for the test and where to ride the frame for the test. And then the next day Jess came out and she shortened up the ride probably by half, and she just checked in on those key points of like, are you bending good to the right, and are you taking me really forward from your canter to trot transitions, and are your hind legs awake, and what's your balance like. But we never, ever, ever drill. Like, you will never walk into my stable and my arena and see us like again and again and again. No, go back and do that half pass again. Um, we're very good at breaking it down. If I need to repeat something so many times, it's like, wait a minute, whoa, whoa, whoa. What's going on with this? Like, why do I need to repeat this 100 times? I need to go fix it and then come back to it. So I think that's also really important of like, again, find the least common denominator of what's actually going on. When we talk about our 5-year-olds, that's like a 15-year-old kid. So you think about the 15-year-olds in your life, and that would be Sydney. So shout out to Sid. Um, and it's like, what kind of jobs can they do? Like, what responsibility do you give them? They can't drive a car yet, and that's totally Freddie. Like, that is totally Freddie. Like, he's like starting to learn some things and he's getting a little bit stronger. Um, there was a little shoulder in the other day and a little spiral down in the canter, but only to like a 12-meter circle, and then we had to go out of it. But that was really exciting because like steering was hard in the fall, and being under control was, and not being like overly exuberant about the squirrels outside the arena. Like, that was hard. So it's fun to see him like growing up and coping with the world, like a teenager or like a 15-year-old. So then we get into the 6-year-olds, and that's like finally when you start to be like, okay, I have a bit of a sense of like who this horse is, because sometimes you hit it in their 4-year-old year. And if you do not hit it in their 4-year-old year, you for sure hit it in their 5-year-old year, where they're like, hey, lady, I'm big and strong enough to tell you no, and I'm a little confident about telling you no, so I'll do what I want. And then you have to say, no, you do what I want. And I will be as kind about it as possible, but there has to be like sometimes you gotta draw a line in the sand about that. And I see Carol Connor commenting about like surly teenagers, and it's like, yes. Um, it's always like the work starts to become a little bit more serious, and then they're like, do I really have to do this? And you're like, yes, you need to at least give an effort. You don't have to be perfect at it, but I need an effort. And so that goes into Laura's question about how do you know when they're ready to move up? And Like, I would say, it's interesting. Like, I'm really optimistic and very positive, and I do a lot of like positive affirmations, pressure, release of pressure for sure, but it's never so much pressure. Like, I start small and like get the right answer. So I teach my horses to seek the yes. That it's like a little bit of pressure and then they find their way out of that. And you're like, yes. And then a little bit more pressure. And then they find their way out of that. And then they're like, yes. And so you keep building on that. So I'm not a big fan of like, I need to make sure he can handle pressure, and like come at the horse. Like, I really work on building my horses from the inside out and that they bloom from the inside out and that I don't ride at them and I don't ride from the outside in. Like I don't ride at them. And so like for me, it's like this interesting thing of when people are like, I need to make sure you can handle pressure. And I'm like, well, I do that also, but it just does not look the same. So I think that's always interesting. Like we can say a lot of the same things, but then the practical application can look very different. So for me, I never feel like I'm ever pushing my horses to a level they're not totally understanding, strong enough to do, and capable of doing at that time. And then if they are all those things and they still want to tell me like, I don't want to do that. Then it's like, you need to give an effort here. And that's when I would get like sharper about the demand, but I don't come at them all in one moment with like this pressure that they have to like navigate out of. I start really small. And that's really with even my young horses, teaching them to give to the pressure of the bit, teaching them how to give to the pressure of the leg. It's very different for the horse to learn to move away from pressure. So for the young horse to understand what the leg means, that takes a lot of practice and a lot of repetition and even groundwork to get them to understand how they can move away from that pressure. And so it's interesting, like, how do I know when they're ready to move up? Again, I'm like I had started to say, I'm really optimistic and very positive, as you can probably imagine. And it's not that I never like get like firm with my horses, like, but they decide that. I don't come at them like I'm going to be this firm. Like I will get firm if you need me to get firm, but we could also just keep going like this. And so for me, I always sort of mention, I have this end goal in mind. I have long-term goals, I have medium goals, I have daily goals, and sometimes that changes when I get on and I feel the mood of that horse or he's not understanding something from the last week. So I'll review that. And so for me, I always joke about, and I say it a lot in my academy videos, that I sort of cajole them into like, so, hey, I don't know, what do you think about a little canter half pass? I was just telling somebody today that Freddie does a canter half pass, but it looks nothing like third level, but it's like the beginning. And that's okay. It doesn't look like anything interesting because he's not going to show third level. He's 5 years old, still growing. He's a 15-year-old kid. And so, but he needs to start like the concept of it. He needs to be open to the idea of following my request. And so it isn't like, now I'm going to put you on the bit and I'm going to bend you and you're going to get over sideways. And if you're not going to get over there, I'm going to hit you with the whip and get up there. I was like, no, it has to be so much more. It almost like sneaks up on them in a way. And Charles, honestly, have he always like opens my mind to this. Like, I cannot tell you how many times in clinics he'll be like, "Oh, half pass at the canter on the next long side," and I'm like careening around, and I'm like, he's never done that before, and he's like, "So we begin, and if it's not great, it's okay but it has to begin somewhere. And it's like daily, gradual gymnastic build up. So there never is this like giant fight of you need to do it, because you've sort of like been talking about it for all this time. Like next year, Freddie's going to half pass at the Canter, totally fine, because I've already started it now. And it's this like, and this is so Charles, and it's even a little bit like when he speaks Hungarian, it's like this beautiful, like sing-songy, beautiful romantic language. That it's like, hey, how about we just like we're cantering on the left lead, and around this corner, we're just gonna look left and then just go left. Oh, look, it was a half pass, you know? And it wasn't collected and it wasn't amazing, but doing the exercise collected the horse a little bit more. And so that's winning, and if you add that in a little bit every day or every other day or whatever your schedule and your program is, it becomes like a non-thing. I remember one of my really, really good friends she was also a super young horse trainer, but she would say to me, she's like, yeah, he was like rearing and like doing all this thing, and I had to like reach up and grab the cheek piece of the bridle and like pull him down. And I was just like, whoa, that's like really exciting at your house. And I'm like, like that just does not happen here. Like that we just maybe I'm doing it wrong, but like confrontation and like reprimands and like you know, it's just you just build it up, and then it never, and like I'm not saying like everything is roses and butterflies all the time. There are 100% times to get clear and firm, and clarity is kindness to the horse. But it's also not full of this like make him do it. It's like I remember Patrick King when he was down in Florida, and he was saying, about we're doing some groundwork, and he said it was a really big moment for me to think about it this way too, because I wanted to like put the horse's head down and then like back the horse up, and it was Apollo, and he was like, I am not going to do that. He was like totally braced in the neck. I'm like, Patrick, this is not going good. Like, help. And he's like, instead of telling him like where he needs to put his neck, maybe you could ask him like, hey, how far could you flex your neck today? And I was like, okay, that's a complete different approach. And I do that when I ride, but I was not applying that to my groundwork. So that was like a huge epiphany for me, as well, because my horses, again, it's just not, we're not fighting and we're not forcing and the horses aren't stressed out. And then they just kind of pop up the levels and eventually pop out at the Grand Prix at the end. And everybody's pretty sound and really happy, and there's no spur marks and white, frothy sweat. It's like, it's kind of just like, yeah, and we're just training. Um, One of my favorite people would always say he's a cowboy, but he was like, with every touch we teach. And I love that. It's about us becoming really sensitive to what we're teaching. And again, going back to Laura's question about, how do you feel about pushing horses too soon? And I would say, I feel really uncomfortable watching that in the sport. Um, because again, like we're breeding the super horse, and we have to go forward, and them going forward is like they're moving like a freak. But we can't forget about the fundamentals of their body building that they need too, even though they're like this super freak of a mover. um, we always have to make sure we're following the training scale and the daily vocabulary of building a gymnastic horse gradually up. which going back into one of my first lectures I did for the academy was, talking about the daily vocabulary that Charles always teaches us about. And that is, long and short strides, long and short frame, the ability to bend and go straight. And so we can't forget that even if we've got these like super freak horses, like we have to take our time. And I always say too, I'm like, I always want to buy a super fancy horse, and then I want to keep it a secret until they're like 7. And then it's gonna freaking like trot amazing. Um, and I want to teach them the fundamentals that will create that. I don't need to practice that. Like, I hope that makes sense, where it's like um, the real foundation of the work is made from elasticity, suppleness, which equals strength, confidence, correctly carrying the bit, correctly going from my leg, learning to go a little bit sideways. Those things for me always lead to a wonderful athlete in the end. I am not trying to squeeze out every ounce of everything at 4 years old. And Jessica Davis and I talked about, she rides Duke, our wonderful 4-year-old stallion that Arthur and Jessica own. And we've really talked about that. Like, we don't want to do anything that's not natural for where he's at his time. Like, we want to do what is best for him for his future. We want to build up his body. We don't want to falsify and wrongly pressure to win the 4-year-old class. Like, he is a wonderful horse with a fabulous walk and a wonderful body and a wonderful mind. And we really take a focus of riding him in a natural balance, a natural frame. He's got to be taking her somewhere. But it isn't about like making his neck like up in a place that the judge is going to like. Like, they have to like that he is going in his natural way for his level of training, for his level of strength, for his age. And that for me, I was really excited when he got like over, I think it was 8.1, like amazing scores. He's ranked number 2 in the country. And that we didn't sacrifice what was best for him to do the FEI 4-year-old class. And that's also something, Laura also asked, as a top pro, do you ever feel pressure to move horses up the ranks? And I would say, I absolutely do not feel any pressure to do that. And every owner I ride for knows that I first and foremost work for that horse. And whatever is best for that horse is what we do. And I have wonderful owners. I mean, I love you guys all, and I appreciate their trust so much in me. Um, I have a fabulous 7-year-old in the barn who is just finishing learning his changes. That's Denali. He's probably one of the most talented horses again. I mean, he's amazing. And he's 7. So technically, he's a year behind, but he needed that time to really learn to be supple in his body, supple in his mind, obedient, willing, and elastic. And now I just posted a little video on Instagram, and something special is happening. Something's really coming. And it just takes the time it takes, can't rush things like that, because then it becomes like this short-sighted goal of like, let me do whatever it takes to force this flying change on this horse that is still crooked and tight and has a tendency to want to go against me in the bending, like not by misbehaving or anything, but in that place of like when he's struggling with his balance, he just gets rigid, and he needs to just get better balance so he stops getting rigid, because forcing him through the flying change now is going to set me up for a big problem the rest of his life, because what you laid down in the beginning, I always think about training young horses as this big chalkboard, right? You got your piece of chalk, you got your piece of chalk and you got this big chalkboard and you start writing on this chalkboard. You better be careful what you write, because you can never, ever with a horse take a sponge and just like wipe the whole thing clean, dry, or clean. You can't do it. You will have to, if you wrote down the wrong word or the wrong thing on that chalkboard, you are going to have to write over so many times over the top of that wrong thing till eventually the right thing is what's going to be remembered over the original wrong thing. Horses are second in the animal kingdom of memory, behind elephants. Behind elephants who don't forget anything. So we have to really be conscientious of what we're writing down on that chalkboard, because you can never erase it with a wet sponge and start over. Like, horses are constantly taking notes on what's happening and how it goes. And their bodies remember. It's all like muscle memory. And then, we have to really concentrate that we're really building the future, thinking about like the 7 habits of highly effective people, of like, start with the end in mind. What do I want this horse to be like, feel like, perform like as a Grand Prix horse? And then like back your way back down to the basics. And things that they struggle with when they're young are still going to be there when they're older, but you've learned to get through them already once. You'll be able to get through it again when this shows up again. Like maybe the first time you attempted to teach a leg yield, there was like a meltdown because they absolutely could not move away from your leg. Well, you got through it. You just kept showing up and you just kept chopping the wood, and by golly, they leg yield now. Well, that same thing might come up again 3 years later, learning a flying change. All of a sudden, there's like meltdown. I can't do it. I'm frustrated. I tune out and I don't stop trying. And you're like, okay, don't panic. You've been down this road before. You got through it once before. You'll get through it again. Same thing comes up about Piaf, like whatever. And we just have to, keep our eyes open and know the path we want to travel, and be open-minded that it's not going to be set in stone. Like, not all 5-year-olds do the 5-year-old test. Not all 6-year-olds learn a flying change right away. Not all wonderful Prix St. George horses are going to be able to do it between the ages of 7 and 9. And that's okay. It's not a race to the Grand Prix. It's about gradually, gymnastically building the horse up. So I am lucky to be surrounded by extremely supportive people, but we never feel any pressure to move the horses up, because all my owners know what we do here is 100% for the horse and always in the horse's best interest. And we always put our goals, our egos, whatever, always to the side, because the horse is that most important thing that we do. They are our beautiful art project that we are working on to create something beautiful with. And sometimes that takes more time. And you're never really done, right? Like, it's always like, do you ever really, put the I think Charles would always say about like, the painting isn't done until you finally put the brush down. Otherwise, you're always going to be like, oh, I could do a little bit more there. Oh, he could bend actually a little better to the right. Ooh, I could make that trot. Like, how expressive can I make that trot? And that, ladies and gentlemen, kind of never ends. Like, Fiji at 17 years old started passaging and trotting better than I even ever believed. And I totally believed in that horse forever. But when he was so strong and it was like his third year Grand Prix, it was like, whoa, now that is Piaffe and Passage. Holy cow. So it's amazing how much strength you can build in those horses um, when you really lay that foundation, great in the first place. So here is a toast to training every day full of merit, full of correct content, positivity, and always doing what's right for your horse. So cheers. I thank you guys for joining me. And if you ever guys have a different subject you want me to cover, drop it in the comments or send me a message and I will see you soon. Thanks for joining. Bye.